Greetings, I'm Herbert Erpaderp, and today I'm going to build this Krupp Protze? I still don't know how to say that. It's a KFZ 81, and it's a 72nd scale kit from First to Fight, intended for their wargame Redbank 1939. On the back of the box, as you might expect from one of these kits, we have a simple painting and marking guide, some information in Polish, German, and English, though the German and English have been swapped. There are also instructions in the form of some exploded diagrams. If you need instructions you can zoom in on, you can find the same image on the First to Fight website, and I'll leave a link in the description below. Inside the box we find a few sprues moulded in a darkish grey plastic. First to Fight's kits are usually quite nice and neatly moulded, and this kit is no exception. Everything looks good, and while you will need to do some cleanup of mould lines and such, it shouldn't be too time consuming. Unlike a lot of other First to Fight kits, there isn't much here in the way of small, thin, easily broken parts, which I'm pretty happy about. I mean, there are a couple of bits you could break, but unless you're a bit rough, it shouldn't just happen. The detailing is quite nice. I'm no expert on these trucks, or any trucks. So, for all I know, the radiator grille might have incorrect spacing or something incredibly important like that. Anyway, I think it looks good. These kits are intended for wargaming, but they're unusual in that they have the kind of detail you'd expect to find in a kit intended for display, which is nice. It does often make for more delicate models though, which doesn't really combine very well with frequent handling, but I feel like this model is solid enough to be played with while still having fantastic detail. It also includes a crew figure which has, in my opinion, an interesting method of assembly.
Will Herbert finally build a crew figure? Who knows? Stay tuned for the stunning reveal!
Decals are included with this kit, and they're just number plates. It's probably about all you really need anyway. And of course, there's a magazine. In this case, issue number 61. And I still can't read Polish, but if you want, there are certainly ways to translate the text. There's another copy of the instructions here, which are slightly larger than those on the back of the box, though I do prefer the digital version that you can zoom in on. I think the magazine is a good inclusion, even if I don't understand the language. Okay, it's time to glue some plastic together. I start with the main body of the truck, and this is made up of some fairly large chunks. The inner side parts go onto the central part first. It took a bit of kajiggering. The sides don't seem to just want to slide into place, but they do fit very well. I apply some glue, and that should encourage the parts to stay where they are. There isn't a lot of play here, so you shouldn't have to do too much nudging. Once both sides are on, I add the seat cushion to the short bench on the right side. Easy enough. There is another bench, but we'll worry about that later. I glue the front part of the truck to the windshield cab front part, and this has some keying, so it seemed like it shouldn't be too hard to get it lined up properly, though I do kind of worry that I might have mounted the windshield part a bit lower than I should have. That assembly does kind of sit in place, but I wasn't sure it was exactly the right place, so I skipped ahead in the instructions and added the truck's frame, which goes into place nice and easy. Now I felt more confident about placing the front of the truck, with the way the frame and the front part will sort of link together. With that in place, I turn my attention to the truck's butt, where I glue on the outer rear sections, with the rear part going first. There's a bit of keying for this, and putting this part on first should help guide the side parts. Said side parts go into place easily, and they are shaped such that it should be quite hard to get them in the wrong position. A little bit of gap minimizing pressure here and there was needed. The steering wheel comes next, and you might find tweezers to be helpful here. There's a small indent in the dashboard that the steering wheel should sit in, and I did my best to get it at the correct angle, assuming the angle shown on the box is in fact correct. Now seemed as good a time as any to add the longer seat for the left side of the truck. It's just as easy as the other seat was, which is to say, very. The spare wheels go on next, and these come with a guard thing moulded into them. They're not especially difficult to install, though there isn't a very big contact area, so you'll probably have to nudge them a bit so they line up properly. Next, I add the towing hook. It should line up with the frame. There's also a small indent in the truck body that it should sit in. I follow that with another spare wheel, and I was a little bit confused by the diagram here. Initially, I thought it might go on the rear of the truck, but it seems to go here. There's no keying or anything to guide this, but that's okay. There isn't a lot of space for it anyway, so how wrong could this placement be? The regular in-use wheels come next, and the wheels seem to have a correct way to be positioned. I referred to the instructions, which, when you zoom in, do show the inner detailing on the wheels, which I used to determine the correct way to put them on, so I think I got it right. It's pretty much the same with the front wheels. There isn't a lot of contact area for any of these wheels, so you'll probably have to nudge them a bit to make sure they are nice and straight, and then you'll have to be careful with them so you don't knock them out of place. Ask me how I know. The front bumper comes next, and this has some hooks moulded into it. The part was, kind of surprisingly, easy to install. There's a couple of tabs on either side of the engine compartment, which the part should mount under. On top of those same mounts, I install the headlamps. These parts are small, so they're automatically fiddly, but they're not too hard to install. A little bit of nudging so they're not at weird angles, and now we can light up the night, which I'm sure is perfectly safe to do in wartime. The ball-on-stick vehicle width markers come next, and these are fairly easy to put on, as far as small parts go. Between finishing the build and the clips at the end of the video, I did manage to damage the left one, but I'm sure it's fine. They're probably not that hard to damage in real life too. The canvas cover, which I attempted to put on next, is a pretty nice looking part, and it even has indents to accommodate the shovel handles on the left. It doesn't quite seem to fit properly with the windshield though. There's a huge gap there, which is why I felt like I might have mounted that a bit too low. It could be fixed with putty, or you could possibly heat and bend the cover part, or you could just leave the cover off. Maybe model some frames and a rolled up canvas part if you want to be real fancy. The final thing is the crew figure, which I'm not going to put in the truck. But I did build him.
What have you done with the real Herbert?
I mean, I'm not going to install him, but I did think it was an interesting way to build a crew figure. Usually they'd just have a pair of arms you'd glue onto either side. But here, as you can probably see, they've got both arms joined by a chest part. I would imagine the idea behind this is so that you can easily get both arms positioned for the steering wheel. Not a bad idea. My figure didn't go together perfectly, but I'm sure if I put a bit more effort into cleaning the parts up, he would have. And that's it. The Krupp Protze, or however you say that, in 70-second scale from first to fight is now completed, and a nice little truck it is. I did mention the ball-on-stick device was damaged and it does look a little bit wonky, but maybe that's just because I know it's like that, so it stands out to me. Anyway, this was a fun little kit to put together. It only took a couple of hours, and because I was streaming the build, that probably translates to about 45 minutes or so. I am prone to a little bit of faffing about when I'm streaming. Part of what helped make it a fun and quick build was that there weren't any thin parts that snap when you perceive them that a lot of first-to-fight kits seem to have. I do still enjoy those kits as well, but it is nice to not have to worry about anything just snapping. The model has really nice detail, especially for a wargaming kit, and even if you don't do gaming, it's still a perfectly fine and relatively low-cost model of an interesting vehicle, and it would be right at home on a diorama or the display shelf. I'm sure First to Fight has something on offer that you could tow with this truck if that's relevant to your interests as well. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to put them in the comments section below. Subscribe if you want to see more, support on Patreon or Ko-fi if you're able, and check out the links in the description. Take care of yourselves, be excellent to each other, and thanks for watching. Farewell.